Have you ever felt like your words don't carry the same weight they used to? Like the people around you, whether it's family, friends, or even strangers, just don't seem to listen anymore? Maybe your grown children brush off your advice, or people interrupt you mid-sentence as if your thoughts don't matter. It's frustrating, isn't it? You've spent a lifetime building wisdom, raising families, working hard, and now, instead of being valued, you sometimes feel invisible. But here's the truth. Respect isn't just given, it's reinforced by the boundaries we set and the way we carry ourselves. And the good news? It's never too late to change the way people treat you. In today's video, we're going to explore 6 powerful ways you can set boundaries and gain the respect you deserve. Stick around until the end, because the last tip might be the most transformative of all. Let's begin with something crucial. Your self-perception matters more than you think. You see, respect starts from within. If you don't truly believe you deserve respect, people will pick up on that. Have you ever noticed that some people command a room the moment they walk in, while others fade into the background? It's not about age, it's about presence. I remember a woman named Evelyn. She was in her late 70s and had spent most of her life taking care of others. She rarely spoke up for herself, always putting her needs last. Over time, her family started making decisions for her, where she would live, how she would spend her time, without even asking for her input. She felt powerless, but one day she made a decision, no more being passive. She started speaking up, not in an aggressive way, but with quiet confidence. She made eye contact, slowed down when she spoke, and used phrases like, "I appreciate your input, but this is my decision." And do you know what happened? People started listening. It was like they saw her in a new light. And there's actually science behind this. Studies in psychology show that how we carry ourselves, our posture, tone, and eye contact, directly influence how others perceive us. If you want to be respected, start by respecting yourself. Stand tall, make eye contact, and speak in a firm but calm voice. You're not asking for respect, you're commanding it. Now here's something that often goes overlooked. Saying no is one of the most powerful things you can do. Have you ever agreed to something just to avoid conflict, even when it made you uncomfortable? Maybe a friend always expects you to watch their pet, or your family assumes you'll babysit at the last minute. At first, it's no big deal, but over time, you start to feel taken for granted. There's a simple yet effective trick to saying no without guilt. Replace explanations with firm, polite statements. Instead of saying, "I'd rather not, but if you really need me to, I guess I can, try. I'm not available for that, but I hope you find a good solution." Notice the difference? The first version leaves the door open for negotiation, while the second is clear and confident. This isn't just about protecting your time, it's about teaching people to respect your limits. And when you set boundaries, you'll notice something interesting. People will start to appreciate your time more, not less. Now that we've covered these first 2 essential shifts, let's move on to something just as important: how to handle criticism and disrespect without losing your cool. Trust me, this next part can change everything. Handling criticism and disrespect without losing your cool. Now let's talk about something that happens to everyone at some point: criticism and disrespect. Whether it comes from family, co-workers, or even strangers, it can feel like a punch to the gut, especially when you know you deserve better. Maybe your adult children dismiss your opinions, saying things like, "You just don't understand how things work these days." Or perhaps a doctor, a store clerk, or even a younger acquaintance speaks to you in a condescending tone, as if your age automatically means you're out of touch. It's frustrating, isn't it? The natural reaction is to either lash out or retreat, feeling hurt and unheard. But here's the thing, there's a way to respond that shifts the power back into your hands. The key is emotional control. When someone disrespects you, they expect one of 2 reactions: anger or silence. Both can reinforce the power imbalance. Anger makes you seem reactive, while silence can make you seem passive. But what if you did something unexpected? What if, instead of reacting emotionally, you responded with calm authority? There's an approach I like to call the pause and redirect technique. The moment you feel disrespected, take a slow breath before responding. This simple pause does 2 things. It prevents you from reacting in frustration, and it subtly signals to the other person that you're in control of the conversation. Then, instead of arguing or defending yourself, redirect the conversation with a firm but composed statement. For example, if someone talks down to you, instead of snapping back, try saying, "I'd appreciate it if you didn't speak to me that way." Short, clear, and powerful. Or if your children dismiss your input, you might say, "I understand you see things differently, but my perspective comes from experience, and I'd like you to hear me out." Notice how these responses don't attack the other person. Instead, they set a boundary while keeping the conversation open. And the best part, people respect confidence. When they see that their words don't shake you, they'll start adjusting how they treat you. Now, let's take it one step further. What if the disrespect is persistent? Maybe a family member repeatedly interrupts you, or a friend constantly makes backhanded comments about your age. This is where a powerful concept comes in: consequence-based boundaries. Here's what that means. Instead of just asking someone to stop, you pair your request with a clear consequence. For instance, if someone repeatedly interrupts you, you might say, "I value conversations where both people are heard. If I'm constantly interrupted, I'll need to step away from the discussion." If a friend keeps making snide comments, you can say, "I don't engage in conversations where I feel put down. If this continues, I'll have to limit our time together." Now, you might be thinking, that sounds good in theory, but what if they don't take me seriously? And that's a fair concern. The key here is follow through. If you set a boundary but don't enforce it, people will learn that your words don't carry weight. But when you stand by your limits, when you actually step away from a conversation or limit time with someone who disrespects you, you send a strong message. I respect myself enough to walk away from toxic behavior. This is incredibly important, not just for how others treat you, but for how you see yourself. When you set and enforce boundaries, something powerful happens. You start feeling more in control, more confident, and ultimately more respected. Now that we've covered how to handle criticism and disrespect, let's move on to another important step: how to regain control in relationships where the balance of respect has shifted. Whether it's with family, friends, or even professional interactions, there are ways to rebuild mutual respect, and that's exactly what we'll explore next. Regaining control in relationships and rebuilding respect. So far, we've talked about setting boundaries and handling disrespect in the moment. But what if the damage has already been done? Maybe your relationship with a family member or close friend has shifted over time, and you've started to feel like the dynamic is unbalanced. Perhaps they've taken advantage of your kindness, or have become used to you always saying yes without considering your needs. You're not alone in feeling this way. Many seniors experience this shift as they age. What can you do to rebuild that sense of mutual respect and regain control in relationships? The first thing to understand is that relationships are constantly evolving, and it's completely normal for dynamics to change over time. But that doesn't mean you have to tolerate disrespect or become invisible in your own life. The key is to take the reins of the situation and redefine your role in the relationship. The first step is having an honest conversation. Now, I know this can sound daunting, especially if you've been passive or allowed things to slide for years. But here's the thing: honest communication is one of the most powerful tools in setting healthy boundaries. Take my friend Robert, for example. Robert had a strained relationship with his daughter, who would often overlook his opinions and make decisions for him without asking. Over time, Robert grew frustrated, feeling like his voice didn't matter. One day, he decided to sit down with her. He said, "I've been feeling like my thoughts don't matter anymore, and that's really hurtful. I want us to be able to talk openly, and for you to listen to what I have to say." It wasn't easy, but the moment Robert spoke up, he took control of the situation. His daughter, initially defensive, began to see things from his perspective. They now have regular conversations where they both express their thoughts and listen to each other. It wasn't an overnight fix, but through that honest conversation, Robert reclaimed respect in his relationship. If you find yourself in a similar situation, remember this: vulnerability breeds respect. When you express how you feel, without attacking or blaming, you invite others to see things from your perspective. And that can open the door to healthier, more balanced relationships. But what if the person you're dealing with isn't receptive to your honesty? What if they get defensive or dismissive? This is where consistency and patience come into play. It's important to be consistent with your boundaries and communication. If someone doesn't respect your initial conversation, don't give up. Set your boundaries again and again until they understand that you're serious. It might take time, but remember, people will treat you the way you allow them to treat you. Another important point to keep in mind is the power of self-care. I know it might sound counterintuitive, but taking care of yourself, emotionally, physically, and mentally, actually strengthens your ability to gain and maintain respect in your relationships. When you're in a good place yourself, you're more likely to assert your needs confidently and with clarity. Let me give you an example. My friend Eleanor had been a caregiver for her husband for several years, and during that time, she put her own needs on the back burner. She felt exhausted, mentally drained, and honestly a little invisible. As a result, her children began to overlook her needs as well. She realized that she needed to make time for herself, not just to recharge, but to remind her family that she had her own life and needs. She began taking small steps. She'd schedule regular me time, whether it was a walk in the park, a visit to the spa, or just reading a book in peace. Eleanor's family saw the change. They saw her prioritizing herself, and in turn, they began to respect her time more. She wasn't just the caregiver anymore. She was Eleanor, a woman with her own desires, energy, and boundaries. By caring for herself, Eleanor didn't just feel better. She gained back the respect she had lost. It's also crucial to remember that respect is a two-way street. Setting boundaries isn't just about demanding respect from others. It's about offering respect in return. This means listening to others, honoring their needs, and acknowledging their feelings. When people feel heard and valued, they're far more likely to reciprocate that same respect. Take a moment to think about your relationships. Are there ways you could listen more attentively, validate others' feelings, or show appreciation for those around you? Sometimes, gaining respect is as simple as giving it. We've covered a lot so far, from setting boundaries to reclaiming respect in relationships. But there's one more crucial point to address: how to stay firm when faced with challenges. Maintaining your boundaries and upholding respect doesn't always go smoothly, especially when others push back. But the next step is all about staying resilient, and that's what we'll dive into next. Staying firm in the face of resistance and challenges. By now, you've learned how powerful it is to set boundaries, communicate openly, and rebuild respect in relationships. But what happens when you start facing resistance? What if, after you've set your boundaries and started standing up for yourself, people still push back? This is a crucial part of the journey, and it's something many seniors face when making changes to their relationships and asserting their needs. It's important to understand that resistance is natural, especially when you're changing patterns that others have become comfortable with. People, even those who love you, may not always react well to your newfound confidence. They may feel uncomfortable or threatened because you're no longer allowing them to treat you in the ways they used to. This can create tension and even lead to conflict. But here's the key: resistance doesn't mean failure. It means growth. When you start setting boundaries, it's not unusual for people to test those boundaries. This is where your consistency and assertiveness come into play. The first few times someone challenges your boundary, it's tempting to back down or feel guilty. Maybe you think, "Oh, I don't want to upset anyone," or "It's not a big deal, I'll let it slide this time." But this is when it's most important to stand firm. The more you enforce your boundaries, the more people will respect them. I had a conversation with a man named Frank recently, who had struggled for years with his son's lack of respect. Frank's son would often make last-minute demands, knowing that Frank would drop everything to help. At first, Frank felt guilty saying no. But after a heart-to-heart talk about boundaries, Frank started to say, "I'm not available for that," and "I need some time for myself today." His son didn't take kindly to this at first. He tried to manipulate Frank by guilt-tripping him, saying things like, "You're never there when I need you," or "I thought you cared about me." At first, Frank was tempted to fall back into his old habits, but he stayed strong. He realized that his needs were just as important as his son's. By sticking to his boundaries, Frank didn't just teach his son respect. He also gained a deeper sense of self-respect. Over time, his son began to understand that Frank wasn't being selfish. He was setting necessary limits. Today, Frank and his son have a much healthier relationship based on mutual respect. But what if the resistance comes from someone who's more persistent or passive-aggressive? This can be more difficult to navigate, especially if the person is someone you love dearly. In these cases, remaining calm and composed is crucial. Don't get dragged into a power struggle or emotional argument. When someone tries to manipulate you or push your boundaries, respond in a calm, assertive manner. "I've already explained how I feel about this, and I won't be changing my stance." Repeat this as needed, and keep your tone steady. The more consistent you are, the more likely people will stop testing you. Another challenge you might face is the fear of loneliness or isolation. This is a common concern for many seniors who are used to prioritizing the needs of others. But here's an important truth: setting boundaries doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a healthier, more respected person. When you stand up for your needs and self-respect, you might find that some relationships shift or change. You might lose a few superficial connections, but the relationships that remain will be healthier, more genuine, and built on mutual respect. It's also worth noting that respect is contagious. When you set boundaries and stand firm, you're teaching others how to treat you. But more than that, you're modeling healthy behavior for those around you. I've seen many people in their 60s and 70s start to set boundaries with their adult children or friends, only to realize that those people also start setting their own boundaries in return. It's a ripple effect. Your confidence and self-respect inspire others to do the same. One thing I've learned over the years is that no one can give you respect if you don't first give it to yourself. This means respecting your time, your feelings, and your energy. It's easy to fall into the trap of constantly accommodating others at your own expense, but that only leads to resentment and burnout. If you want to be respected, you have to start by respecting your own limits. Now let's wrap this up with a little exercise that can help you reinforce your boundaries and stay firm. I challenge you to think of one relationship in your life where you've been allowing disrespect or crossing boundaries. This could be with a family member, a friend, or even a colleague. Now, identify one small boundary you can start setting with that person. It could be something as simple as saying no when you're asked to do something you don't want to, or it could be as big as having a heart-to-heart conversation about how you want to be treated. Once you've identified that boundary, start setting it with confidence. Don't over-explain and don't feel guilty. Just assert it calmly and give yourself permission to stand firm. Over time, you'll notice that the more you practice this, the easier it becomes. You'll gain more respect, not only from others but also from yourself. Setting boundaries and regaining respect is a journey. There will be challenges along the way, but with each challenge, you'll grow stronger, more confident, and more respected. So take a deep breath, stand tall, and remember, you deserve respect, and it's never too late to start reclaiming it. In the next part, we'll dive into practical steps you can take to maintain healthy boundaries long-term and make sure the respect you've earned sticks. You won't want to miss it.